My granddaughter called at night. "Grandma, I'm at the police station. My stepfather beat me and says I attacked him. They believe him." When I arrived, the desk officer turned pale. "Sorry, I didn't know." The phone rang at 3 in the morning. I grabbed the receiver, still half asleep, and heard crying. Not just crying, the kind of sobbing that makes your throat tighten. "Grandma, I'm at the police station," Clara said through her tears. "He hit me, Trent, and now he's telling them that I attacked him. They believe him." I sat up in bed, my heart pounding so hard that it rang in my ears. Clara, my granddaughter, 16 years old, skinny as a rail, always wearing headphones and trying to be invisible. "Where are you?" "Which station?" "On Madison Avenue. Grandma, please come. Mom isn't answering her phone, and I'm scared." I threw off the blanket and rushed to the closet. 5 minutes later, I was in the car trying not to speed, even though I wanted to just step on the gas. Clara at the police station. Trent hit her. Trent, the smooth guy Julia brought home a year ago, smiling broadly and saying she finally felt happy again. I never believed in that happiness, maybe because I had worked as a prosecutor for 32 years and had seen too many men who knew how to smile while they were hitting. Then maybe it was just maternal instinct. Although with Julia, that instinct had failed me in recent years. I knew the Madison precinct well. 10 years ago, I used to come here often on business. I walked in, and the officer on duty looked up. He was a young man, about 35, with a neat haircut and tired eyes. He looked at me and turned pale. He really turned pale, as if he had seen a ghost. "Mrs. Crawford," his voice trembled. I remembered. Marlowe, Kevin Marlowe. He was starting his career when I was still working in the district attorney's office, a young patrolman who dreamed of becoming a detective. I had recommended him for promotion several times. "Where's my granddaughter?" I didn't waste time on pleasantries. Marlowe stammered, "Listen, Mrs. Crawford, this is a complicated situation. Mr. Waller has filed a complaint against your granddaughter for assault. He has scratches on his hands, and the girl, well, she's acting a little erratic." "Where is she?" I repeated more slowly, looking him straight in the eye. "In the interrogation room, but now is not the best time." I walked past him without waiting for permission. I knew this building like the back of my hand. The interrogation rooms were in the left wing, second door. Marlowe stomped after me, muttering something about procedures, but I didn't listen. I pushed open the door and froze. Clara was sitting at the table, hunched over, her arms wrapped around herself. Her left eye was swollen, a dark purple bruise that would be even worse tomorrow. Her lip was broken, her chin scratched. Her hair was tousled, her t-shirt crumpled. She looked up, and there was so much fear in her eyes that I wanted to kill someone. "Grandma," she whispered. I walked over, sat down next to her, and hugged her shoulders. She was trembling. She wasn't crying. She was trembling as if after a cold shower. "Tell me everything," I said quietly. Clara swallowed and wiped her nose with her sleeve. I was lying in bed, sleeping. I heard the door open. He came into my room. He stank of beer. I asked him what he wanted, and he started yelling that I didn't respect him, that I talked down to him, that my mother suffered because of me. I told him to leave, tried to get up, but he pushed me back onto the bed and hit me, just like that, in the face. She trembled again, and I squeezed her shoulder tighter. I screamed, and he said that if I opened my mouth again, it would be worse. He left and slammed the door. I waited 5 minutes, then climbed out the window and called 911. A patrol car arrived. 2 men. One of them knows Trent. They worked together at the factory. And when Trent came out, so calm, sober, in a clean t-shirt, and started saying that I had attacked him, that I had hit him, and he had only pushed me away, they believed him. They just took his word for it. I slowly stroked her back, said a few soothing words, then straightened up and went out into the hallway. Marlowe was standing by the door, his face guilty. "Where is Mr. Waller now?" I asked. In Captain Jennings' office, they're writing up a report. Did you examine my granddaughter? Marlo looked away. We wanted to wait until an adult. She's 16, she's a minor, she has physical injuries, and you didn't examine her? I spoke calmly, but each word sounded like a hammer blow. Mr. Marlowe, do you remember what I've been doing for 32 years? He nodded without looking up. Domestic violence cases. And I've seen hundreds, do you hear me? Hundreds of these situations. A grown man beats a child, then comes in sober, smiling, shows scratches, which, by the way, are easy to do to yourself, and says he was defending himself. And the child sits there, disheveled, frightened, with bruises under his eye, and everyone thinks, well, teenagers are irrational. Right, Mr. Marlowe. Mrs. Crawford, I understand, but Mr. Waller has a reputation. He cooperates with us. He has a reputation. I smiled, and it was a cold smile. Wonderful. Now tell me, if I call my colleagues at the state prosecutor's office right now and tell them that the Madison police station is ignoring the protocol in a case of violence against a minor, are you prepared to explain why you decided that the reputation of a grown man is more important than a bruise on the face of a 16-year-old girl? Marlowe pressed his lips together. I took out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. I wasn't even bluffing. I really did have the numbers of people who could come and check it out within an hour. I'll arrange for an inspection right now, he muttered, and walked down the hall. I returned to the room. Clara was sitting in the same position, staring at the floor. I sat down next to her and took her hand. Everything will be fine, I said, although I wasn't sure that was true. The door opened. I turned around and saw him. Trent Waller, 41 years old, broad shoulders, neat beard, confident gait. He came out of the captain's office holding a piece of paper in his hands, a copy of his statement. Probably. He saw me. He stopped. For a moment, just a moment, his face showed an expression I had seen dozens of times in my career. Not fear, not confusion, cold, controlled anger. The look of a man who is used to being in control and hates it when someone interferes. He smiled, wide, almost friendly. Mrs. Crawford, he said calmly, I'm glad you're here. I hope you can help Clara calm down. She's having a hard time right now. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, and a picture was already forming in my head. I knew men like him. I knew how they worked, and I knew that today he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He had hit the child of a prosecutor who had dedicated 32 years of her life to putting people like him behind bars. Clara fell asleep on my couch around 7 in the morning, when it was already light outside. I covered her with a blanket and went to the kitchen to make coffee. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the anger I had been trying to contain all night. At the police station, Marlowe arranged for a medical examination, and they documented a bruise, a broken lip, and a graze on her shoulder. Trent sat in the captain's office the whole time, calm, as if he were discussing the weather forecast. When we left, he stood by the door and said to Clara, I hope you've calmed down, just like that, as if she had thrown a tantrum and not he had hit her in the face. The phone rang at 9. Julia? I looked at the screen and hesitated for a moment, but picked up the phone. Where's Clara? My daughter's voice was tense, high-pitched. She's with me. She's asleep. Why didn't you call me? Why did you take her without my permission? I poured myself some coffee and sat down at the table. Because she called me at 3 in the morning from the police station. Because your husband hit her in the face. Because you didn't answer my granddaughter's calls, or mine. Pause. I could hear Julia breathing, fast, nervously. I'm coming, she said and hung up. 20 minutes later, she was at my door. She burst in, didn't say hello, and went into the living room where Clara had already woken up and was sitting with her arms wrapped around her knees. Julia stopped, looking at the bruise under her daughter's eye. For a moment, just a moment, something like pity appeared on her face. Then she pressed her lips together. "Clara, get ready. We're going home." "She's not going anywhere," I said from the doorway. Julia turned around. She was 38, but now she looked older. Dark circles under her eyes, clenched temples, a crumpled blouse. She had lost weight in the last year since she married Trent. At the time, I thought it was from happiness. Now I could see it was from stress. "Don't interfere in my life, Mom." Her voice trembled. "You always do that. You always know better, always." He hit her, Julie. "It was a conflict. Clara provoked him." I froze. I looked at my daughter and didn't recognize her. This woman standing in front of me, shouting that a 16-year-old girl provoked a grown man to hit her. Is this my daughter? The same Julia who used to cry when she saw beaten dogs on the street? Who comforted Clara after her nightmares when she was little? "Provoked him with what?" I asked quietly. "By not cleaning her room. By talking back. Is that an excuse for violence?" "You don't understand." Julia ran her hand over her face. "Clara has been... She's not herself lately. She comes home late, lies about where she's been. She was rude to Trent last week in front of his friends. He's trying to be a father to her, and she... He's not my father," Clara shouted from the sofa. "And he never will be, and... Yeah, oh, see?" Julia pointed her finger at me as if I were to blame. She hates him. She just hates him, even though he tries. He buys her things, asks where she is, who she's talking to, and she takes it as, he reads my messages. Clara stood up, her face red. "He forbids me to see Eli. He's always asking where I am, who I'm with, why. It's not concern, Mom. It's..." "Enough." Julia raised her hand. "I don't want to hear it. Get ready. Now." "No." Julia froze. "What do you mean, no?" "She's staying here," I said, "until you understand what really happened." Julia laughed, shortly, bitterly. "Are you serious? Are you going to lecture me? You who shut yourself off after Dad died and didn't talk to me normally for a year? Who always put work before family?" It hurt, because it was true. After Kevin died, I did shut myself off. I didn't know how to live without him, so I hid behind work, paperwork, and court cases. Julia needed me then, and I couldn't be there for her. "Maybe," I said quietly. "Maybe I was a bad mother. But that doesn't justify your husband hitting your child." "That's not what happened." "Then what did happen?" Julia turned away and wrapped her arms around herself. "Clara attacked him. He just pushed her away. He broke into her room in the middle of the night, drunk, and hit her in the face," I said firmly. "That's a fact." Yes, the medical examination confirmed it. "And if you can't see that, then you have a problem." Julia turned around, tears in her eyes. "Do you know what my problem is, Mom? It's that I was alone for 3 years. For 3 years after Mark's death, I took care of Clara, my job, the bills, and no one helped me. You called once a week to ask how things were going, but you weren't really interested. And then Trent came along, and he was there for me. He helped me, supported me, and I felt like..." She fell silent, wiping away her tears. "A human being," she finished quietly, "not just a mother or an employee. A person." I suddenly understood. I understood why she clings to this man so much, why she defends him. Because he gave her what she hadn't received in years. Attention, a sense of being needed. And now she's afraid of losing it, even if it means paying with her own child. Professional experience. I prayed that it would never be needed in my family relationships. "Julie," I approached her, "I know it was hard for you. I know I wasn't there when you needed me. But this isn't about me. It's about Clara. And if you don't protect her, I will." Julia pushed me. Not hard, but unexpectedly. "You're always like this. You always think you know better, that only you can decide what's right." She turned abruptly and walked to the door. At the threshold, she turned around and looked at Clara. "When you decide to come home and behave normally, call me." The door slammed. Clara cried. Quietly, hopelessly, I sat down next to her, hugged her, and she leaned against my shoulder. "She doesn't believe me," she whispered. "My own mother." I didn't know what to say, because it was true. For the next 2 days, I did what I did best. I dug for information. I called an old colleague from the prosecutor's office, Dave Rimmer, who was now working as a lawyer. I asked him to run a check on Trent Waller. Dave called back a few hours later. "Elizabeth, it's interesting," he said. "Trent was married before. His wife filed for divorce 5 years ago and requested a restraining order. But then she withdrew the petition. Officially, family circumstances were resolved." "What's his wife's name?" "Brianna Collins. Now Mason. She remarried. She works as a cashier at Food Mart on Oak Street." I wrote down the address. I went there the next day. Food Mart was an ordinary supermarket. Fluorescent lights, the smell of fresh bread, lines at the registers. Brianna worked at the third register, a woman of about 35 with light brown hair tied back in a ponytail and a tired face. I waited until her shift ended and approached her at the exit. "Brianna Mason?" She looked alarmed. "Yes, and you are—" "Elizabeth Crawford. I need to talk to you about Trent Waller." Her face changed. It became closed, frightened. "I don't want to talk about him. He hit my granddaughter. She's 16. So I'll say it again. I want to talk about Trent Waller." Brianna froze, staring at me. Then she said quietly, "Let's go to my car and talk." We got into her old Honda, and Brianna was silent for a long time, her hands on the steering wheel. "He never hit me in public," she finally said. "Only at home. He always made sure the bruises weren't visible. On my back, stomach, legs. He controlled everything. Money, friends, even what I ate. If I bought something without his permission, he would make a scene. He would say I was worthless, that I was nothing without him." She spoke quietly, monotonously, as if she were telling someone else's story. "When I filed for divorce, he promised to make my life hell. I didn't believe him. I thought it was just words. But a week later, the police stopped me. They found a bag of weed in my car. I don't even smoke. But he planted it, I know. And he called the police. I was arrested and I almost lost my job. Then Trent came and said that if I withdrew the application, he would sort things out with the police. I have a son, Mrs. Crawford, from my first marriage. I was 19 when I gave birth to him. If I get fired, if I get a criminal record, I can't lose custody of him." She finally looked at me, and there was so much exhaustion in her eyes. I withdrew the complaint. He withdrew the complaint. We divorced quietly. I got peanuts, but at least I got out alive. I moved to the other side of town. I didn't hear from him for 2 years. I married Keith, a good man who works as a car mechanic. I finally felt like I was living, and now you're telling me that he's back. She didn't finish. I nodded. "Thank you for telling me." Brianna grabbed my hand. "Be careful. He's smart. Very smart and evil. He knows how to look normal when no one is watching." I drove home, her words spinning around in my head. A classic case. Control, manipulation, violence behind closed doors. I've seen dozens of cases like this. Hundreds. But when it's your family, everything is different. Because Julia doesn't want to see. She's in love. And being in love is the best way to blind yourself. Meanwhile, Clara was slowly thawing. The next evening, we were sitting in the kitchen. I was cooking dinner, and she was doing her homework. Suddenly, she said, "You know, Grandma, at first, he was normal." I turned around. Clara was looking at her notebook, but she wasn't writing. "When Mom brought him home, he smiled and joked. He bought me the headphones I wanted. He asked how school was going. I thought he was okay. I thought Mom had finally found someone good." She paused, then continued. "But after 6 months, he changed. He started asking who I was talking to, why I came home late, why I didn't reply to his messages right away. Once he took my phone and read my messages with Eli, a guy from school who's just a friend. But Trent told Mom that I was seeing him secretly, that I was lying. Mom believed him. She always believes him. Clara's voice trembled, and I walked over and sat down next to her. He tells her that I'm manipulating her, that I'm doing everything I can to make them fight, but I just want him to leave me alone, to stop meddling in my life. But my mom, she's in love, Grandma. For the first time in 3 years since Dad died, she's smiling again, and I don't want to take that away from her, but she started crying, and I hugged her. "It's not your fault," I said quietly. "Whatever happens, it's not your fault." That evening, when Clara went to bed, I got a message from Marlo. It was short. Trent withdrew his statement. Julia wrote an explanation that it was a family conflict. The case is closed. Sorry. I looked at the screen and realized Trent had played the situation. He forced Julia to protect him, forced the police to close the case, and now he was officially a victim of teenage aggression, not a rapist. He did it so cleanly, so professionally, that a chill ran down my spine. Because I knew this wasn't the end, it was only the beginning, but I wasn't going to give up. We'll see who wins. Julia came to pick up Clara 3 days later. I opened the door and saw not only her. Trent was standing behind her by the car, his arms crossed over his chest. He was smiling. Julia looked tired but determined. "Mom, Clara's coming home. We've talked it over." Trent apologized. I looked past her at the man by the car. He nodded at me politely, almost warmly. "Julie, listen to me. Enough." She raised her hand. "I know what you're thinking, that you're a former prosecutor and you see right through everything, but you can't accept that someone else has come into my life, that someone is taking Mark's place." "This isn't about Mark," I said quietly. "This is about the fact that this man hit your child. It was a mistake. He admitted he went too far. He was stressed, had problems at work, drank too much. It won't happen again." I looked her in the eyes. "How many more times does he have to hit her before you believe it's not a mistake?" Julia pressed her lips together, turned around, and went to the living room, where Clara was sitting on the sofa with a book. Her granddaughter looked up, and fear appeared on her face. "No," she whispered, "I don't want to." "Clara, enough of this drama," Julia said wearily but firmly. "Get ready, we're leaving." "Mom, please." "Now." Clara looked at me imploringly, helplessly. I approached Julia and lowered my voice. "Don't do this. Let her stay here a little longer, until she calms down. She's my daughter, Mom, mine, and I decide where she stays." She went into Clara's room where her granddaughter's things were and began packing them into a bag. I stood in the doorway feeling completely powerless. Formally, Julia was within her rights. Clara was a minor. The police had closed the case. There was no restraining order. There was nothing I could do. 15 minutes later, Clara was sitting in the back seat of Trent's car, staring out the window. Julia sat in the front. Trent turned to me as he stood by the driver's door. "Mrs. Crawford, I understand your concern, really, but I assure you I love this family and will never do anything to harm them again." He spoke sincerely, so sincerely that anyone would believe him. But I saw his eyes, cold, controlled, the eyes of a man playing a role. They left. I went inside and sat down on the sofa where Clara had been lying an hour ago. Options swirled around in my head. File for custody, but on what grounds? That Trent hit her once, then apologized and the case was closed? Call social services? They would come, talk to Julia, who would say that everything was fine and leave. I felt something I hadn't felt in many years, helpless. That same evening, at 9 o'clock, I received a text message from Clara. "He follows me around all the time, watches me. Mom says I'm exaggerating." I reread the message 3 times. Then I typed a reply. "Hang in there. I'll think of something." But what? What could I do when the law was on Julia's side and Julia was on Trent's side? I didn't sleep all night. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea that had long since gone cold and thought. By 5 in the morning, I had a plan. Not perfect, but at least something. I called an old acquaintance, Lenny Groves, who had gone into private investigation after retiring from the police. I asked to meet him. Lenny arrived at 8 with coffee and a pack of cigarettes. We sat in the backyard. I explained the situation, and he listened without interrupting. "Elizabeth, you do realize you're asking me to do something that's borderline illegal?" he said when I finished. "I do. If we get caught, it's trouble for both of us." "I know." He took a drag and exhaled smoke. "Okay, what exactly do you need?" I took 2 small devices out of my pocket, voice recorders I had bought that morning at an electronics store. Lenny looked at them and smiled. "Old-fashioned, but it works. Do you want your granddaughter to record?" "One to carry with me at all times, the other in the room. It can be disguised as a charger or something else." "You can." He took the devices. "But there's a catch. If Trent finds them, he'll say you're encouraging the child to spy. He'll use it against you." "That's a risk I'm willing to take." Lenny nodded. "There's one more thing," I said. "Julia's neighbors." "Which of them have security cameras?" "Every other one these days," Lenny smiled. "Do you want me to talk to them?" "I want them to keep an eye on the house. If they see anything suspicious, they should call me." "That's more complicated. People don't like to get involved in other people's family affairs." "Try," I looked at him. "Please." Lenny put out his cigarette. "You've always been stubborn, Crawford. Okay, I'll do what I can." 2 days later, I met Clara at the school. She came out after class, looked around to make sure there were no adults nearby, and quickly walked over to my car. She sat in the front seat, and I saw a new bruise on her forearm. It was small but clear. "What's that?" I asked, pointing. Clara pulled her sleeve down. "Yesterday, he grabbed my arm when I tried to leave the room, said the conversation wasn't over. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white." "Listen carefully," I said. "I have 2 things for you. The first is a voice recorder. It's small, fits in your pocket. Turn it on when he's around, always." I took out the device. Lenny had done a great job disguising it as a key ring. Clara took it and turned it over in her hands. "What if he finds it?" "Tell him it's a gift from a friend, just a key ring. But it's actually a voice recorder. The button is here," I showed her. "It records to a memory card." Clara nodded and put it in her backpack. "Second," I took out another device, a larger one. "Put this one in the room. You can disguise it as a clock or a charger. It also records." "Grandma, is this legal?" I looked at her. "Not really, but sometimes you have to break the rules to protect those you love." Clara took both devices. We sat for another 5 minutes. I told her how to use them, then she left. I watched her walk to the bus stop, thin with a heavy backpack, and prayed that it would work. For a week, Clara recorded everything. I received the files every 2 days. She sent them via a secure messenger that Lenny had set up. The first recordings were nothing special. Just ordinary conversations, the sound of the TV, Julia's voice. But then something else began. A recording from Thursday. Clara is home alone doing her homework. You can hear the door opening, heavy footsteps. Trent's voice. "Where's Mom?" "At the store." "Why didn't you clean your room?" "I told you this morning. I cleaned it." "That's a lie. I went in there. It's a mess." "It's my room." The sound of a blow, not hard but clear. Clara screams, then cries. Trent's voice, calm. "Don't you dare lie to me. Understand?" Silence. Then footsteps. Doors slamming. I listened to this recording 3 times, and each time I was shaken. So it continues. He beats her when Julia isn't there. I copied the file, saved it to a flash drive, and sent another copy to my email. Another recording from Saturday. Julia is home. They're all having dinner. The conversation is calm, even pleasant. Trent jokes. Julia laughs. Clara is silent. And then, "Clara, why are you so gloomy?" Julia's voice. "Just tired." "She's always like that." Trent's voice. Light, relaxed. Teenagers, you know. Always in a bad mood. "Maybe she should see a psychologist." Julia, no, don't, Clara says quickly. Why? Maybe it would help. I said, no. Clara gets up, her footsteps, the door slams. Julia sighs. I don't know what to do with her. Give her time. Trent's voice is soft and supportive. She's going through puberty. Everything will work out. I turned off the recording and just sat there staring at the ceiling. He played his role perfectly. With Julia, he was caring and understanding. Alone with Clara, he was completely different. I went to Julia's with these recordings. I arrived in the morning when Trent was at work and Clara was at school. Julia opened the door in her bathrobe, holding a cup of coffee. Mom, I wasn't expecting... I need to show you something. We sat down at the kitchen table. I took out my laptop and opened the file. I pressed play. Julia listened, first with a neutral expression, then with tension. When the recording ended, she leaned back in her chair. Where did this come from? Clara recorded it. You gave her a voice recorder? Julia's voice rose. You encouraged her to spy on us? I gave her a way to protect herself. That's manipulation. Julia slammed her palm on the table. You set this up on purpose. You want to destroy my happiness because you're unhappy after your father's death. It hurt. It hurt so much that for a moment I couldn't find the words. Julie, I finally said, listen to yourself. You just heard him hit your child. And instead of asking why it happened, you blame me. Because you always do that, Julia shouted. You always interfere. You always know better. Maybe Clara really provoked him. Maybe she did it on purpose to break us up. I looked at my daughter and didn't recognize her. This woman who defends an abuser and blames her own child, who is she? Get out, Julia said quietly. Get out of my house. I took my laptop and left. At the door, I turned around. When you finally wake up, it will be too late. I will do everything I can to protect my granddaughter. But first of all, I will pray that my daughter comes to her senses. The door closed behind me. The following week, there was a school party. Clara was supposed to go with her classmates. A regular disco in the gym, nothing special. Trent forbade it. He said she was behaving too badly to deserve entertainment. Clara went anyway. Her friend picked her up, and they drove there together. She texted me at 9. He's here. He's taking me away. Help me. I grabbed my keys and drove to the school. When I arrived, there was a crowd at the entrance. Teenagers, a few teachers, and Trent. He was holding Clara by the wrist, dragging her to the car. She was resisting, screaming. Someone was recording it on their phone. Let me go. You're coming home now, Trent said calmly, but his face was stone cold. You're hurting her, a girl shouted. Trent looked at her and smiled. She's my daughter. She ran away from home. I was just worried. He called her his daughter. My granddaughter, whom he beats, is his daughter. I ran out of the car and approached them. Trent saw me, and for a moment his face changed. Rage, pure, cold rage. Let her go, I said. This is none of your business, Mrs. Crawford. She's my granddaughter, so let her go. Now. He let her go, but only because he heard a siren. Someone had called the police. A patrol car pulled up and 2 officers got out. Trent immediately switched gears. A smile, relaxed shoulders. He approached them. Officers, thank you for coming. My daughter ran away from home. I was worried, so I came to pick her up. She's a little emotional, but she's fine. Clara was standing behind him, and one of the officers asked her, Is that true? She looked at me, then at Trent, and nodded. She just nodded and said nothing. The officers talked to Trent for another 5 minutes, then left. Trent took Clara to the car. I stood and watched them drive away, feeling completely broken. The next morning, at 6 o'clock, someone rang my doorbell. I opened the door. Julia. Her hair was disheveled. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking. Mom! Her voice was barely audible. I couldn't sleep last night. After we argued about Clara, you called and yelled at me, and I yelled back. I couldn't sleep. I lay there thinking, and Trent got up and went to bed, or so I thought. But then I heard him get up and leave the room. I followed him. He was in his study talking on the phone, quietly, but I could hear him. She fell silent, swallowed. "He was laughing, Mom," he said to someone. "That stupid cow will believe anything. A little more and I'll transfer the house to my name. She won't even notice." He laughed. At me. Julia cried, quietly, hopelessly. I hugged her and she leaned on my shoulder like she used to when she was little. "What have I done, Mom? What have I done?" Julia sat at my kitchen table holding the cup of tea I had poured for her, but she didn't drink it. She just stared at it, as if she could find the answers there. Clara was asleep upstairs. I had taken her from Julia's house in the morning without asking permission. This time, my daughter didn't protest. "I don't know where to start," Julia said finally. He was always so organized. He said he was managing our finances because I was too busy with work. I believed him. God, how I believed him. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. This morning, when he left for work, I went into his office. I never went in there. He said it was his personal space, and I respected that. But after I heard that conversation, I had to look. Julia took a thick folder full of documents out of her bag. She put it on the table. It was in the closet, under a pile of old magazines, bank statements, contracts signed by me that I don't remember. Mom, he was transferring money from our joint account to his personal account, several thousand every month over the course of a year. She didn't finish. She just pushed the folder toward me. I started leafing through it. The statements showed regular transfers, $2,000 or $3,000 every month. Some larger amounts. A loan agreement for $25,000 in Julia's name signed 3 months ago. The signature looked similar, but I'd seen enough forged documents to notice the difference. The letter D was slightly different. The slant was wrong. "How much in total?" I asked. $38,000. Maybe more. I haven't checked everything yet. That's all my savings after Mark's death. Everything I've been putting aside for years. She cried again, quietly, hopelessly. How could I have been so stupid? I walked over and hugged her shoulders. "You're not stupid. He's a professional. He knows how to manipulate people. But I should have seen it. I should have." She broke free, stood up, and began pacing around the kitchen. "Clara tried to tell me. You tried. Brianna probably would have, too, if I had listened. But I was so in love, so happy that someone was finally paying attention to me. I gave him everything, and he just took it. I gave her time to calm down, then said, 'What do you want to do? Go to the police.' 'You can, but it's complicated. You gave him access to your account after the wedding. He'll say it was joint money that you knew about the transfers.' 'But the loan! I didn't sign it!' 'The signature looks similar. The examination could take months, and Trent will hire a lawyer who will drag everything out.'" Julia sat back in her chair and hid her face in her hands. "So what should I do? Just watch him take everything?" "No," I said firmly. "But you have to be prepared for it to be long and difficult, and that he won't give up easily." That same day, I called Dave Reimer, a lawyer I had worked with before. He agreed to meet that evening and came to my house with a briefcase full of files. "Elizabeth, I looked at the documents you sent," he began, laying the papers out on the table. "I'll say right away, Soiwei One, it's bad, but not hopeless." "How bad?" "Trent is legally savvy. A joint account after the wedding means that formally he has the right to transfer money. As for the loan, yes, the signature is forged. I can see that too, but it will be difficult to prove. An expert opinion costs money and takes time. What's more, half of the house belongs to him by law after the wedding. If she files for divorce, he can claim his share." I pressed my lips together. "What about a restraining order?" "Without new evidence of violence, it's unlikely. The case with Clara is closed, and Julia herself wrote an explanation that it was a family conflict. The recordings you showed me," he shrugged, "were obtained illegally. The court won't accept them. So what do you suggest?" Dave sighed. "Divorce. It will be long and difficult, but it's possible. The house will have to be sold and divided. Some of the money may be recovered through the courts, but not all of it. And be prepared for Trent not to give up. People like that never give up easily. He left at 10. I sat in the dark living room, looking out the window and thinking. 32 years as a prosecutor, hundreds of cases of domestic violence, financial fraud, and what? I can't protect my own family because the law is on the side of a manipulator who knows how to game the system. The next day, Julia decided to ask Trent. I advised her to wait until we had the documents ready, but she didn't listen. She said she had to hear it from him. She called me in the evening, her voice trembling. He denies it. He says I allowed him to use the money, that all the transfers were with my knowledge. What about the loan? He says I signed it. I just don't remember. That I was busy, distracted, and he helped with the finances? Julia, wait. He said something else, that if I go to the police, he'll sue me for slander. And that half the house is his, and he has a right to it. And that Clara is inadequate, and he can file a guardianship petition saying I'm a bad mother. I clenched the phone. Where are you now? At home. He's at work, but he'll be back in an hour. Take Clara and come to my place. I can't just leave. It's my house. Julia, listen to me. It's dangerous. When people like him feel they're losing control, they become unpredictable. Come to my place. Now. She arrived half an hour later with 2 bags of belongings and Clara. They settled into the guest room. Julia barely spoke, sitting on the bed, staring at the wall. Clara came up to me in the kitchen. Grandma, he's calling Mom 10 times, leaving messages. What is he saying? At first, he asked her to come back, said they would talk it over. Then he started threatening her, that she would regret it, that everyone would regret it. I looked at Julia's phone, which was lying on the table. The screen kept lighting up with new messages. I picked it up and read the last one. You're making a mistake. Come back before it's too late. I called Lenny Groves and asked him to come over. He showed up 20 minutes later, and we sat down to discuss a plan. I need witnesses, I said. Women he's cheated on before. Brianna, who I told you about, maybe others. Lenny nodded. I'll dig around. I'll let you know tomorrow. He called me the next day with 3 names. In addition to Brianna, there was Samantha Ray, who had dated Trent 4 years ago, and Lisa Corman, a colleague from the factory from whom he had borrowed money and not paid back. I met with each of them separately. Samantha worked as a cashier at a gas station, a young woman of about 28 with a tired face. She said that Trent had started an affair with her when she had just gotten divorced. He was charming, attentive, and promised to marry her. He asked her to lend him $10,000 for an investment that would double the money. She gave him all her savings. A month later, he disappeared. He didn't answer his phone, and at work, he said he had moved to another city. He didn't return the money. She tried to take him to court, but the lawyer said that without a receipt, it was impossible to prove anything. Lisa Corman, a 45-year-old woman, worked as a quality inspector at a factory. She said that Trent approached her several times after work, offered her a ride, and invited her for coffee. She refused because she was married. One day, he asked to borrow $5,000, saying that his son had problems and needed urgent surgery, and that he would pay her back in a week. She gave in to his pleas and lent him the money. He did not pay her back. When she started reminding him, he said he had not taken anything, that she was making it up. He threatened to tell management that she had been harassing him and that she would be fired for harassment. She fell silent and wrote off the money. I gathered them all together, Brianna, Samantha, Lisa, at my house. They sat in my living room looking at each other, and there was the same thing in their eyes. Pain, anger, shame. Thank you for coming, I said. I know it's not easy. But you can help stop him. How? Samantha asked. He always gets away with it. Not always. I looked at each of them in turn. If we go to court together, if we show a pattern, that he's been doing this for years with different women in the same way, then there's a chance. What if he threatens us again? Brianna asked quietly. Like last time. This time you're not alone. This time we're together. And this time I won't let him intimidate you. Being a prosecutor for over 30 years has its advantages, even in retirement. They exchanged glances. Then Lisa nodded. I'll testify. Enough of what he's doing. Samantha nodded too. Brianna looked at me for a long time, then quietly said, "Me too." 3 days later, what I feared happened. Julia called me at 2 in the morning, screaming into the phone, "He's here, he's breaking down the door." I jumped out of bed and grabbed the phone. "Where's Clara?" "With me in the bedroom. We're locked in. Mom, please come." "Did you call the police?" "Yes, but—" I could hear banging on the door in the background and Trent shouting, "Open up, Julie, open up now." "I'm on my way," I said. "Hang in there." I got dressed in 2 minutes, jumped in the car. I drove, breaking all the speed limits, praying that I would make it in time. I pulled up to Julie's house in 15 minutes. The front door was open, broken down. I went inside, my heart pounding so hard it was throbbing in my temples. Trent was standing outside the bedroom door on the 2nd floor, pounding on it with his fist. "Open up, bitches! You won't prove anything. Nothing will change." He was drunk. I could tell from his voice, hoarse and uneven. His shirt was wrinkled. Sweat was pouring down his face. I climbed the stairs quietly. He didn't hear me. He kept banging on the door, shouting. I took out my phone and turned on the recorder. He turned around and saw me. For a moment, just a moment, fear appeared on his face. Then he smiled, but it was an unnatural smile. "Mrs. Crawford." What a surprise. "What are you doing in this house, Trent?" I asked calmly, holding my phone so that the camera could see him. "This is my house." "Half mine. I have the right—" "You don't have the right to break down doors and threaten people?" He stepped closer, and I saw the rage in his eyes, real uncontrolled rage. "You ruined everything. You and your interference." "Everything was fine until you got involved." "Everything was fine until you beat up a 16-year-old girl and stole money from her mother." He laughed, short, angry. "You can't prove anything. Julia voluntarily gave access to the account. Clara is unstable. Everyone knows that, and you're an old woman clinging to the past." He moved closer, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. "Get out of my house." "No." His face contorted. He raised his hand. I don't know if he was going to hit me or just scare me, but at that moment I heard footsteps downstairs. The police, finally. 2 officers came up the stairs and saw us. One of them, I recognized him as Marlowe, assessed the situation in a second. "Mr. Waller, step away from the door." Trent turned around, and again that instant transformation. A smile relaxed shoulders. "Officers, it's good to have you here. My wife has locked herself in the bedroom and won't open the door. I'm worried about her." "He broke down the door," I said. "He threatened them. I recorded everything." I held up my phone. Marlowe looked at me, then at Trent. "Sir, are you drunk?" "I had a couple of bottles, but—" "Did you break down the door to this house?" "It's my house. Do you live here now?" Trent hesitated. My wife and I are temporarily—" "Then no," said the second officer. "Sir, you are under arrest for trespassing and disturbing the peace. You have the right to remain silent." Trent tried to break free, shouting something about injustice, but the officers restrained him quickly and professionally. They put handcuffs on him. He looked at me, and there was such hatred in his eyes that I felt cold. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "You'll all regret this." They took him downstairs. The bedroom door opened, and Julia and Clara came out. Both were pale, with red eyes. Clara rushed to me and hugged me. "Grandma, I was so scared." I stroked her hair as I watched the police lead Trent out of the house. Marlowe approached me. "Mrs. Crawford, you'll have to give a statement." "No problem." He nodded and left. I stood amid the chaos, the broken door, the police downstairs, Julia and Clara trembling beside me, and felt something like relief. I finally got him. The trial dragged on for 8 months. 8 long, exhausting months of paperwork, hearings, and expert testimony. Trent hired a lawyer, a good one. who tried to portray him as the victim of a conspiracy of embittered women. But when Brianna, Samantha, Lisa, and then 3 other women Lenny had found took the stand, the picture became clear. The same pattern for years. Find a vulnerable woman, make her fall in love, take control, take her money, disappear or intimidate her into silence. An examination of the signature on the loan agreement confirmed that it was forged. Julia stood on the witness stand and said in a trembling voice that she had never signed these documents, that she knew nothing about the money transfers. Trent's lawyer tried to break her down, asking why she hadn't checked her accounts, why she had kept quiet for so long. But Julia held her ground. I sat in the courtroom and felt proud of her. For the first time in a long time, Trent got 3 years, not life. Not what I had hoped for, but at least something. The judge said he took into account the lack of previous convictions. But the pattern of behavior was too clear to ignore. When the sentence was announced, Trent's face didn't change. He just stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. They let him out in handcuffs, and he glanced at me, briefly, coldly. I held his gaze. I didn't look away. But the strangest thing was what happened before the verdict, when the trial was just beginning. Lenny called me one morning, his voice tense. "Elizabeth, have you heard the news?" "What news?" Trent was beaten up. Last night near the Red Deer bar on the outskirts. He was found unconscious in an alley. Broken rib, concussion, face smashed. I sat down on the sofa, clutching the phone. "Who?" "The police don't know, or they're pretending not to know. There are no witnesses. The cameras weren't working at that moment. But I dug around. It was the brother of a woman named Tamara Green. Trent had an affair with her 3 years ago, dumped her when she got pregnant, and took all her savings, $15,000. She lost the baby due to stress. Her brother, Marcus, found out about the court where Trent was staying and decided to teach him a lesson. Is Trent giving evidence? No. The police came and asked him, but he's keeping quiet. He says he doesn't remember who attacked him. Either he's afraid it will get worse, or he understands that if he makes a fuss, even more dirty stories will come out. Lenny paused, then added, "Marcus wasn't arrested. The police say they're investigating, but you know how it is. If the victim doesn't cooperate, the case will be quietly closed." I didn't know how to feel, be part of me. The former prosecutor, understood that this was wrong. Violence does not justify violence, but another part of me, the grandmother who saw the bruises on her granddaughter's face, felt something like satisfaction. Justice comes in many forms. Sometimes it comes through the law. Sometimes it comes through a fist in an alley. After that incident, something strange happened. Other women started contacting me. Not the ones Trent had cheated on. Others, the wives, sisters, and daughters of those women, the husbands, fathers. They found out about the trial, that Trent would finally be held accountable, and wanted to testify. I collected their stories and passed them on to the prosecutor. By the end of the trial, the list of witnesses had grown to 12 lives that Trent had destroyed or tried to destroy. The judge couldn't ignore that. That's why he gave him 3 years, even though he could have limited himself to a suspended sentence. Julia got all her money back. Through the court, through expert examinations, through lawyers. $38,000 that Trent had taken, plus the loan that was closed. The bank agreed to cancel the debt after the expert examination confirmed that the signature was forged. But even after getting her money back, Julia didn't feel any better. She quit her job a month after the trial. She couldn't stand her colleagues' looks and the whispering behind her back. She told me, as we sat in my kitchen, that one of her coworkers, Janice, who had been her friend for 5 years, said to her face, "How could you not have noticed? It was so obvious." You know what the worst part is? Julia stared into her cup of tea. She was right. It was obvious. But I didn't want to see it. She moved with Clara to a smaller apartment on the other side of town. It was a 2-room apartment, old but clean. She found a job as an administrator at a veterinary clinic. A simpler position, less pay, but no one knew her there. No one asked about Trent, about the trial, about the bruises on her daughter's face. She came home, fed the cat they got a month after moving, and watched TV series. She tried not to think. Clara went to a psychologist twice a week. The woman's name was Dr. Alice Young, and she specialized in domestic violence trauma. At first, Clara didn't want to talk. She sat in a chair, stared at the floor, and answered in monosyllables. But slowly, session by session, she began to open up. She talked about the fear that wouldn't let her go. Even now, when Trent was in prison. About how she was afraid of loud noises and sudden movements. That she couldn't watch movies where women were beaten. That she didn't trust adult men, not even her teachers at school. Once Clara came to see me after a session. I made her some hot chocolate and we sat on the porch. She looked at the street, at the trees turning yellow in the fall, and said quietly, "Grandma, Dr. Young says it's not my fault, that I didn't provoke him, but sometimes I still think maybe if I had been quieter, more obedient, he wouldn't have—" "No," I interrupted her. "It doesn't work that way. People like Trent find a reason to hit you no matter what you do. If not this, then something else. And they don't stop until they break you. And only when they have completely destroyed you do they lose interest and leave. Maybe because often even then they don't stop. It's not your fault. It never was." She nodded, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't quite believe me. Words don't make trauma go away, even the right ones. The relationship between Julia and me remained complicated. We saw each other once a week, usually on Sundays, and had dinner together. But the conversations were strained, full of silence. Julia was still ashamed. I saw it in her eyes when she looked at Clara, ashamed that she hadn't believed the child right away, that she had defended the man who beat her daughter. One evening, when Clara went to the kitchen, Julia said quietly, I don't know how to apologize to her. Whatever I say sounds hollow." "Maybe you don't need to apologize with words," I replied. "Maybe you just need to be there for a long time, until she believes that you won't let her down again." Julia nodded, wiping away her tears. Trent's lawyer, by the way, tried to make a fuss about the voice recorders I gave Clara. He sued me for illegal wiretapping. The judge reviewed the case and ruled a $3,000 fine for invasion of privacy. I paid without hesitation. As I was leaving the courtroom, Trent's lawyer, a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit, said to me, "Mrs. Crawford, you broke the law. You should be ashamed of yourself." I looked at him. I feel many things, but shame, especially for this, is definitely not one of them. And I walked away without looking back. A year and a half after that phone call in the middle of the night, Clara got into college. Not the most prestigious, not with honors, but she got in. The sociology department at a small college in a neighboring town, an hour's drive from home. She wanted to go, wanted to live in a dorm, start over where no one knew her. The three of us, me, Julia, and Clara, drove in my car, packed with boxes of belongings. Clara sat in the back, wearing headphones, looking out the window. Julia was silent most of the way, only occasionally asking if Clara had forgotten this or that. The dorm was old but cozy. The room was small, 2 beds, 2 tables, 1 closet for 2. Clara's roommate wasn't there yet, so we unpacked our things in silence. I hung up shelves, Julia laid out clothes, and Clara tried to assemble a table lamp. "Where should we put the lamp?" Clara asked, turning it in her hands. "On the table, by the window, or by the bed?" "By the table," I said. "It's brighter there for studying." "No, by the bed," Julia objected, "so we can read before bed." "But if it's by the table—" "Mom, the bed is better." They argued. Nothing serious, just the usual mother-daughter squabbling over trifles, and suddenly Clara laughed. Sincerely, freely, in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. She placed the lamp in the middle of the room and said, "Here, so that no one feels offended." Julia laughed too. I looked at them. At my daughter, who was slowly pulling herself together, at my granddaughter, who was learning to live without fear, and felt something warm in my chest. We finished unpacking by evening. We went to dinner together at a small cafe near the college. We sat at a table by the window, ate pizza, and Clara talked about the courses she wanted to take and the clubs she planned to join. Julia listened, nodded, and occasionally asked questions. I was mostly silent, just watching them. When we dropped Clara off at the dorm, she hugged us both, Julia first, then me, tightly for a long time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The three of us drove home. Now the car was empty, without boxes. Julia fell asleep in the front seat, her head leaning against the window. I drove in silence, watching the road and thinking. Trent was in prison. In a year, he would be released early for good behavior. That's how the system works. He would get out, start a new life, and maybe find a new victim. Maybe not. I don't know. But something tells me that not all of his past victims will be satisfied with such a light punishment. And who knows if he won't pay another visit to the hospital. The money was returned, but Julia spent some of it on lawyers, a psychologist for Clara, and moving expenses. There were almost no savings left. The scars remain, both on Clara's body and in her mind. Dr. Young says that the trauma will remain forever, and we can only learn to live with it. The relationship between Julia and me is still tense. We are trying, but there is something between us that cannot be erased with words. Shame, pain, guilt. Clara doesn't trust easily. She avoids men who are like Trent, tall, broad-shouldered, with confident voices. She's afraid to be alone in the dark. I drove up to my house and woke Julia up. She rubbed her eyes and looked at me. "Thank you for coming with me." "Anytime," I replied. She got out of the car, waved, and drove to her apartment. I went inside, took off my shoes, and put the kettle on. I sat in the kitchen, looking out the window at the dark street. Sometimes that's all you can get. Not justice in its pure form, but at least a part of it. The right to live on. Tomorrow is a new day. No guarantees, no promises of easy happiness, but with hope, a small, stubborn hope that somehow doesn't go away. I drank my tea, turned off the light, and went to bed. In my dream, I saw Clara, not the frightened girl with a bruise under her eye, but another one. Grown up, smiling, free. Maybe someday it will happen for real. I will continue to believe that everything will get better. And I am sure that someday everything will really happen as it should.